Now and then we are learning about different ways of communication, that how did early human beings start communicating with each other. So today we are going to learn about one more way of communication which is possible only through the pictures. So first question comes, when did the pictures learn to run? Running pictures, which will let a film run in front of our eyes, have been present since 1870. Stationary ones since the Stone Age. The pictures painted on the walls of the caves tell the story of the animals that were hunted at that time. The Indians of North America recorded the most important events of the year with the small line drawings on buffalo skins. The first steps in the direction of photography were made with the camera obscura. Real life landscapes and objects could now be shown on a screen. However, only with the invention of the film could the images be stored and slowly made to move. Today, films run on a large scale in cinemas and television screens, in slow motion or normal motion. But what is a camera obscura? In a camera obscura, which is a Latin word meaning dark chamber, light enters a dark room or a closed box through a small hole. If the hole was small enough, a very faint inverted image would be seen on the opposite wall. At the end of the 13th century, astronomers made use of this to observe the sun. In this way, they could study its hot surface without having to look directly at it. Today, we buy a special pair of goggles to look at the sun. We sometimes may be feeling or questioning to ourselves, the films we are having pictures through or seen through, who might have invented it? So when was the film invented? The film as the storage option for images was invented at the beginning of the 19th century. The researchers at that time were experimenting with toxic chemicals to store light reflected from the objects on a long-term basis. The Frenchman Louis Daguerre finally succeeded in 1837 to fix the images on a light-sensitive material in a salt bath. This was the first film. However, the exposure times were very long. People had to sit for a long time while the photographer captured the image on a photographic plate. The path to the film roll was paved in 1889 by the American George Eastman. A thin layer of silver salts was applied on flexible plastic celluloid. Digital cameras did not need this because they store everything on a computer chip. But how did pictures run? Pictures can run only because our eyes cannot register more than 20 pictures per second. If we see more than 20 pictures, they look very similar but differ only in minor things. Our brain perceives them as moving. Flip books or cartoon films work on this principle. The movements could not be recorded with the cameras for a long time because the exposure times were too long. The first serial photography succeeded in 1872. The British photographer Edward Muybridge captured a running horse with 30 cameras. He mounted the finished pictures on a disc, which was rotated in a device. Through a viewing roll, you could see a running horse. Later, individual photos were recorded with just one camera on a single film. This was the birth of the cinema. How does a television work? Tubes are present inside a conventional television set. In these tubes, the images are broken down into small pixels with the help of a beam of electrically charged particles. The beam sends information about the color and brightness of each pixel to a chemically luminescent layer on the rear of the screen. The electron beams light up the pixels on this layer depending upon the speed. They become blurred to form a picture for our eyes. Along with the fat-bellied tube televisions, there are also televisions with flat screens that have been improved very rapidly. How does slow motion work, which we often see in the movie scenes? In order to observe a football goal very precisely, the actual time span of the goal is extended. To do this, special cameras record the football game at 120 frames per second. But the film in slow motion is shown at the normal speed, that is at 24 frames per second. As a result, the film runs 5 times slower than the normal. This is slow motion technique was discovered and patented in 1904 by the Austrian priest August Musker. Thank you so much.